I'm Rachel Moore, 34, unmarried, and, according to my family, completely unremarkable. They think I'm just a bartender pouring drinks for tips, barely scraping by. They don't know that I own the entire restaurant chain they're throwing my sister's engagement party in tonight. Funny, isn't it? My mother once said I'd wasted my potential. My sister loves to introduce me as the one who didn't quite figure life out. And yet, here we are at a venue I built from the ground up, with my name on every lease, every payroll, every plate that's about to be served. I wasn't planning to say anything tonight. I really wasn't. But then someone greeted me with 4 words that turned the whole night upside down. "Good evening, Madam Moore." And just like that, the masks began to crack. It wasn't always like this. There was a time when we were just ordinary. My mom worked part-time at the local library. My dad managed a plumbing supply store. We lived in a modest 2-story home on Maple Avenue, the kind with a squeaky porch swing and chipped paint around the windows. We weren't rich, but we weren't struggling either. We had Sunday pancakes, secondhand bikes, and bedtime stories. Then came the divorce. Dad moved out, and so did stability. My mom reinvented herself. She went from cardigans and coupons to contour kits and cocktail parties. Her new goal in life wasn't love or security, it was status. And she didn't climb alone. She took my sister Julia with her. Julia was always the perfect one. Even back then. Her grades were better. Her friends were prettier. Her shoes, newer. And when Mom began reshaping our image to fit her new social aspirations, Julia adapted without question. Pageants, debates, influencer-style Instagram poses before that was even a thing. Me? I stayed behind in every sense of the word. I liked being quiet. I liked helping at Dad's new diner when I wasn't in school. While Julia posted outfit hauls, I stocked ketchup bottles and learned how to fold napkins with one hand. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt real. That's where it began. I think the wedge. The unspoken belief that I was somehow lesser, because I chose sweat over spotlight. Because I didn't beg to fit the new version of our family. Because I didn't chase wealth the way they did, I built value differently. I remember the first time my mother looked at me, like she didn't recognize me. I was 19, working full-time at a downtown bar to support community college. She came to visit once, just once. She wrinkled her nose, as if the air offended her. "You really want to waste your life behind a counter?" she asked, glancing at the tray in my hand like it was a disease. "I'm saving up," I answered, wiping a table, planning to open something of my own. She smiled, but not kindly. "Rachel, sweetie, if you want to own something, marry a man who already does. That's how the world works." I didn't respond. What was the point? Julia, on the other hand, was thriving. She had an internship at a glossy PR firm, a new boyfriend with family money, and a wardrobe that screamed status in every thread. Every family gathering became a parade of her accomplishments and a subtle roast of my career path. She still mixes drinks, can you believe that? "Hey Rachel, do bartenders get dental now? You know, you'd be so much prettier if you tried just a little." Sometimes I laughed it off. Sometimes I went silent. But each comment etched something deeper. Not bitterness. Exactly. Just resolve. They didn't know what I was building. They didn't see the spreadsheets I poured over at 2 a.m., the business plans I rewrote a dozen times, or the mentorship calls I juggled between bar shifts. All they saw was an apron and a tip jar. So, I let them. I let them think I was the poor one, the stagnant one, the sister who didn't make it. But I was learning something they never could, in their curated world of image and applause, how real business works. How to lead people, not just manage impressions. How to listen before speaking. How to survive when the only thing holding your world together is your belief that you're meant for more. I never planned revenge. I wasn't waiting to rub it in their faces. But the contempt, that quiet, consistent contempt they showed me over the years, it's the reason I kept going. It's the reason I signed the final lease under a holding name that even my mother's country club couldn't trace. It's the reason I kept showing up to Sunday brunches dressed like I couldn't afford valet. And it's the reason I said yes when the event planner called to confirm a high-end engagement party booking for Julia Moore and Preston Hargrove at one of my properties. I gave them the green light. And I made sure my best bartender uniform was pressed and clean for the occasion. Sunday dinners were never just meals, not in my family. They were showcases. It started when Julia got her first promotion, a glorified title for fetching coffees at a PR firm, but my mother treated it like she'd won a Pulitzer. That weekend, the table was set with Mom's best china, candles lit for ambiance, and music playing softly in the background. "Julia, tell us about your new office," Mom said, swirling her wine like we were on the set of some talk show. "Oh, it's nothing," Julia blushed falsely. "Just a corner desk with a great view." I passed the mashed potatoes in silence. No one asked how my bar was doing. Every Sunday after that felt like walking into a press conference where I was the unspoken headline, still not living up to expectations. The meals weren't cruel in a loud, obvious way. No one screamed. There were no slurs or slammed doors. But there were silences that sliced deeper than words, pauses after I spoke. The polite nods, the glazed-over expressions that screamed, "We've stopped listening." And the jabs. Always the jabs. "You know, there's this evening program at a culinary school," Mom once said, dabbing her mouth with a linen napkin. "You'd be so good at something practical, like cake decorating." "I run a bar, Mom." "Exactly," she smiled, as if I'd proved her point. Then came the time Julia brought Preston home. Her boyfriend turned fiancé, turned future hedge fund husband, tall, self-assured, always on his phone. At dinner, he shook my hand with one of those limp, dismissive grasps people use when they've already decided you're irrelevant. "So you're the creative one," he said, sipping his sparkling water like it insulted him. "I guess you could say that," I replied. "She makes drinks," Julia added, as if I were a party trick. "You should see her pour a Negroni blindfolded." Everyone laughed. I smiled. I always smiled. The only one who ever tried to defend me was my father. He'd come to dinners on occasion, sitting at the far end of the table, his plaid shirt clashing with the curated champagne-colored decor. But after the divorce, his words didn't carry much weight in that house. And eventually, he stopped coming altogether. "Rachel, don't let them shrink you," he'd said once, as I walked him to his car. "I'm not shrinking," I replied. "I'm observing." Because that's what I was doing, taking notes, learning. Each insult, each dismissive glance, each forced compliment was a blueprint, a guidebook on everything I never wanted to be and the fire I needed to keep building something that couldn't be dismissed so easily. Still, there were days when it chipped away at me. Birthdays where I got a candle but not a toast. Holidays where I was asked to help in the kitchen while Julia mingled with important guests. And the year I brought a date, a kind, humble man who ran a nonprofit only to have Mom pull me aside and whisper, "Are you sure this is your level?" It wasn't just what they thought of me. It was that they thought so little of what I chose to love. They thought bartending was failure, that mixing cocktails was frivolous, that I'd settled. They didn't see the nights I closed alone at 2 a.m., breaking down inventory and training new hires. They didn't know how much I made more than Julia, even then. They didn't ask. Because they didn't want to know. Knowing might complicate the narrative. Knowing might mean they'd have to reevaluate the hierarchy they built with Julia at the top, and me, in the kitchen maybe, near the sink. So I played my part, smiled through the mockery, laughed at the jokes, thanked them for the career advice I never asked for. And all the while, I was building something that would someday make them choke on their own condescension. I remember one dinner in particular about 2 years ago. The night I signed a lease for my 5th location, I came straight from work, hair still damp from the rain, shoes squeaking on their polished floors. Julia took one look at me and said, "You really should invest in a better coat." I said nothing. That night, I had a 6-figure check sitting in my purse, uncashed. It was easier that way, letting them assume I was just surviving, because in their world, appearances were everything, and in mine, Substance was silent until it decided to speak. What they didn't know, couldn't possibly imagine, was that every restaurant they had ever bragged about, every cocktail they praised at their business functions, every new "it" spot on the west side, I was already behind it. I remember the moment it all clicked. A guest at Julia's birthday asked me if I had ever considered doing something real with my life. That night, I drove home with my jaw clenched and my heart steady. And I decided. The next time they invited me to a celebration, I'd walk in through the front, not as a guest, not as a servant, but as the owner. And that moment was coming soon. People think empires are built in boardrooms. Mine began behind a sticky bar counter with a broken soda gun and an overworked dishwasher who cried in the alley after her double shift. That was my first lesson in leadership. Real bosses take out the trash, too. I didn't have investors or seed funding or a shiny startup pitch. What I had were calluses on my hands, a notebook full of ideas, and a stubborn belief that hospitality didn't have to be shallow, that a restaurant could be more than a place to show off, that it could be a refuge, a ritual, a rhythm in someone's week that made life feel a little more held. It started small. I was 25 when I put my name on the lease for my first bar, a run-down, near-bankrupt tapas place in an aging part of the city. Everyone said I was insane. The floorboards creaked, the lighting buzzed, and the only customers were a pair of retired jazz musicians who paid in coins. But I saw something. I saw potential not in the decor, but in the layout, the flow, the kitchen bones. I rewired everything, ripped out the carpet myself, painted the walls with friends. I slept in the stockroom the first 2 months to save on rent. Some nights I cried into my arms on the prep counter when the walk-in fridge broke again and the payroll barely cleared. But I didn't stop. I named it Juniper, after the scent of the gin I used in my very first cocktail recipe. It became a neighborhood secret. The menu was seasonal, the drinks were story-based, and I trained every staff member not just to serve, but to remember. Allergies, first dates, job interviews. We didn't just pour, we paid attention. By year 2, Juniper had a 2-week reservation waitlist. I still remember the first time my name was printed in a magazine, The Quiet Queen of Cocktails. My mother never mentioned it. Julia said I must have paid for PR. I didn't correct her. Why would I? Their misunderstanding had become the greatest shield. It gave me freedom. While they rolled their eyes at my apron, I was negotiating contracts with property developers. While Julia posted beach selfies, I was mapping foot traffic patterns. While Mom suggested I try cake decorating, I was closing on a second location. And then a third. Then came Blue Leaf Group, my holding company. The name was meaningless to anyone in my family, but in the hospitality world, it became quietly known. Our venues didn't scream status, they whispered it. Sustainable materials, staff trained in emotional intelligence, menus designed around mood and time of day, everything intentional, nothing flashy. By the time I turned 32, we had 7 locations. Now we have 12. A 13th is under construction. I never posted about it. I never showed off. Not because I was ashamed, but because I wanted to know if people would still see me without the packaging. Would they care if the clothes were plain? If the car was simple? Or was their love conditional, filtered through handbags, hashtags, and high-rises? Turns out, I had my answer every Sunday. While I quietly expanded payroll to over 150 employees, my mother reminded me to smile more around guests. While I was shortlisted for a Forbes Under 35 feature, Julia called to ask if I could help mix cocktails for a friend's baby shower. You'd make it fun. I said yes. I always did. There was something satisfying about staying quiet, letting success grow roots instead of banners. My staff knew, my mentors knew, my customers knew. But my family? They didn't care to ask, so I didn't offer. Then came a different kind of call. A man named Avery from an events firm. We're planning a high-profile engagement party, he said, and the couple is very specific about the venue. I almost laughed when he said the names. Julia Moore and Preston Hargrove. They had requested Vera, one of my newest spaces. All white interior, reclaimed oak, a live string quartet on weekends. It had just been featured in Architectural Digest. I waited for a red flag, a moment of hesitation. But nothing came. They didn't know. They had no idea. So I said yes. And when the contract came through, I signed it under Blue Leaf Group. No reason to spoil the surprise. I assigned my best event manager. I approved the floral arrangements. I upgraded the wine list. On the house. It wasn't pettiness, it was poetry. The culmination of everything they never saw in me, now fully built, fully functioning, and about to host the event they considered the most important moment of their lives. I wasn't going to go. At first. Then Stephanie, my COO and best friend, raised her eyebrows at me over morning coffee. "You're not serious. You're really going to miss your sister's engagement party, at your own restaurant?" "It's not about her," I said. "I just don't want to make it weird." "You mean you don't want to steal the spotlight?" she replied. "Or you're afraid they'll still ignore you?" That one hit harder. I sat there, staring into my coffee, and realized she was right. I wasn't afraid of rejection anymore. I was afraid they still wouldn't care even if they knew the truth. But maybe that wasn't the point. Maybe it wasn't about forcing them to see me. Maybe it was time to walk into that room and see myself fully, unapologetically, for everything I had built, even if no one else clapped. So I RSVP'd. No +1, no label, just me. Rachel Moore. Bartender. Builder. Boss. From the outside, it looked like the happiest time in Julia's life. The engagement announcement was everywhere, at least everywhere within my mother's social circle. Instagram posts with filtered ring photos. A professional photo shoot with Julia and Preston in matching cashmere. The caption read, "When two legacies unite." I didn't comment. Mom called me the day after the post went viral in their world. "We're having a little celebration for Julia. Something elegant, tasteful, nothing over the top," she said, clearly rehearsing the phrasing. "We've already chosen the venue. It's called Vera. Very stylish, Rachel. Maybe you've heard of it?" I paused. "Yeah, I've heard of it." "Wonderful. You'll come, right? It would mean so much to Julia. And maybe try to wear something a bit festive this time? Not black." "Sure, Mom. I'll figure something out." She hung up without asking if I was busy. That's how it always went. Her invitations came wrapped in expectation and mild judgment, like instructions printed on fine stationery. I didn't tell her Vera was mine. I didn't tell Julia either when she sent a group message with RSVP instructions, dress code suggestions, and a reminder to be on time. We're expecting some high-profile guests. No one asked if I needed help with transportation, or if I'd bring someone. I was still the forgotten sister, the one people assumed would be there early to help light candles or serve drinks. The irony stung, but there was something peaceful about it too. For once, I wasn't trying to prove anything. They had walked straight into my world not because I led them there, but because they wanted what I had created. And they didn't even know it. In the weeks leading up to the event, my staff at Vera worked seamlessly. I didn't need to micromanage, they were professionals. They had no idea the bride-to-be was my sister. They treated the booking like any other luxury event. Precision, elegance, discretion. But one afternoon, as I reviewed the final wine list in my private office, my operations manager Megan poked her head in. "Hey, weird question. Bride's name is Julia Moore, right?" I looked up. "Yeah." "Why?" Megan hesitated. "I think one of the bartenders said she saw you tagged in an old post of hers. Are you related?" I smiled faintly. "She's my sister." Megan blinked. "Oh, wow. I had no idea. Should I tell the team?" I shook my head. "No need. Let's keep it professional." "Got it. Just let us know if you want anything handled differently." I appreciated her tone, neutral, no pity, no curiosity. That was what I'd built here, a team that respected boundaries. A team that let me be Rachel, no labels, no family baggage, just the woman who signs their checks and eats lunch at the back table like everyone else. The night before the event, I stayed late at Vera, not out of stress, but nostalgia. The lights were low, the place set beautifully. White linens, crystal glasses, floating orchids in shallow bowls of water. Preston's parents had paid for a high-end string quartet. I watched them rehearse quietly under the chandeliers, their bows moving in graceful arcs like dancers in slow motion. In a strange way, I was proud. Proud of how far we'd come. Proud that even my sister, who once said I'd end up pouring drinks for divorcees, chose this space to mark the most important moment of her life. I didn't feel bitter. Not then. Only curious. Would she still sneer at the bartender? Would she still ask if I was still working there? Would Mom still offer backhanded comments about how nice this place is for something casual? It didn't matter anymore. They had entered my world now, whether they recognized it or not. I stepped behind the bar briefly, tracing the polished edge with my fingertips. The last time I stood here during service, I'd invented a drink called the Quiet One. Lavender gin, muddled blueberry, a whisper of lemon. No one had ever guessed it was named after me. Back then, I blended into the room. Tomorrow, I wasn't sure. Maybe I'd stay invisible. Maybe not. I took one last walk through the venue, checking placements, counting chairs. I passed the head table 10 seats, all marked with name cards. Julia and Preston. Mom and Dad, Preston's parents, 2 business partners. Heather, Julia's best friend. And at the far corner, my name. Rachel Moore. No title, no +1, no indication that I was anything more than a guest. But I smiled. Because they'd soon realize. The only reason there was a table at all was because of me. The morning of the party started with rain. Not the dramatic, cinematic kind, just a dull drizzle that made everything feel heavier than it was. Seattle does that sometimes. It matches your mood before you even know what you're feeling. I made coffee. Black. No breakfast. I stared out the window of my apartment overlooking the docks, watching people hustle with umbrellas and deadlines. I wasn't nervous, not really, but my hands wouldn't stop fidgeting with the sleeve of my blazer. I'd picked the outfit the night before, a deep navy suit, tailored, understated, no logos, no flashy heels, just clean lines and quiet strength. I slipped on a simple watch and small silver earrings, nothing my mother could call too much, but enough to remind myself, you belong. At 3:00 p.m., I arrived through the side entrance of Vera, not to sneak in, but to observe. The venue was stunning. Soft lights filtered through glass fixtures. Orchids glowed under delicate spotlights. Waiters moved like shadows, efficient and soundless. I'd trained them well. I circled the perimeter of the main room while guests began to arrive through the front. I recognized a few: lawyers, real estate brokers, old money types who loved to name-drop vacation homes. I stayed out of view. That's when I heard it. "Is that the bartender?" The voice was light, disinterested, feminine, familiar. I turned. Heather, Julia's best friend since high school, the one who once told me I had working-class posture. She was pointing at me, squinting. "Rachel?" she called. "Wow, I didn't know you were working tonight." Before I could respond, she smiled syrupy and shallow. "That's sweet, though. Helping out on your sister's big day. Family spirit." I blinked. "I'm not working." "Oh." A pause. "Then, why are you here so early?" "Because this is mine." I didn't say it. Not yet. Instead, I nodded toward the bar, just checking in on some things. She didn't seem to notice the weight of my tone. "Well, if you get a second, could you ask someone to fix the lighting over table 4? It's casting a weird shadow on Preston's mom's dress, and she's freaking out." She vanished before I could reply. The irony made me want to laugh, but all I felt was the slow burn in my chest. Familiar. Controlled. Then Julia arrived. She walked in like the room owed her something. Hair in soft waves, ivory dress hugging her perfectly. Preston followed, all tailored arrogance. My mother fluttered beside them, a glittering figure in heels too high for her knees. The photographer buzzed around them like a housefly in love. I stayed near the back, sipping water, watching. It took 15 minutes for Julia to spot me. "Rachel?" she called, surprised. I turned. "Hey." She looked me up and down, brow slightly furrowed. "You're dressed up." "I am." "Oh, that's new." She didn't mean it kindly. She meant it like I'd dared to enter a club I didn't belong to. "Glad you could come," she added, a beat too late. "I wasn't sure you'd feel comfortable in a place like this." I let that hang in the air. A place like this? The irony sat between us like a third person. "I think I'll manage," I said quietly. Then came my mother. "Darling, you're here early," she said, kissing the air near my cheek. "And looking lovely, that suit fits you so, practically." "Thanks, Mom." She lowered her voice. "There's no need to help serve tonight, by the way. Just enjoy the evening, okay? We have staff." Her eyes scanned my shoes. "Though next time maybe something with a little heel?" I said nothing. I watched as she floated off to direct the cellist into a better lighting spot. For a moment, I simply stood there, absorbing the sheer absurdity of it all. The place, the people, the remarks, none of them realized they were swimming in my creation. Then came the final straw. I walked over to the bar to check a small supply issue. One of the bartenders had flagged a last-minute substitution. As I leaned over the counter, a young staff member, clearly nervous, rushed up behind me. "Ma'am, you can't be here," she said, placing a gentle but firm hand on my arm. I turned, surprised. "I work here," I said calmly. Her eyes widened. "You're?" Before I could finish the sentence, another voice sliced through the hum of conversation. "Excuse me," a man said loudly, with the kind of voice people turn to. It was Simon Lang, one of our top investors, and a well-known figure in the hospitality world. 40-ish, graying at the temples, always impeccably polite. He was walking toward me, smiling warmly. And then he said it. "Good evening, Madam Moore. The place looks magnificent, as always." The room stilled, just for a moment. I heard my mother's intake of breath. Julia froze mid-sentence. Heather's champagne glass tilted slightly in her hand. "Madam Moore." The title echoed through the chandeliered silence. I nodded. "Thank you, Simon. I'm glad you could make it." He extended his hand. I shook it steady, deliberate. Then he added, "I assume your team is handling the Hargrove event? Beautiful setup. Very in line with your usual standard." More murmurs. Some guests looked at their phones, others whispered. Simon turned slightly, noticed the crowd, and grinned. "Oh, have you not all met the owner of Vera?" And just like that, the room exhaled with gasps, side glances, mental recalibrations. Julia's mouth opened, but nothing came out. My mother stepped forward slightly, her face an unreadable mask. "I thought you were bartending?" she said, blinking. "I was," I said. "Still do, sometimes." "But this place," Julia started. "Is mine," I finished. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Silence swept in, heavier than any insult they'd ever thrown at me. And for once, I wasn't the quiet one. "Madam Moore." 2 words, spoken clearly, calmly. But the impact was nuclear. The moment Simon Lang said it, everything, every insult, every sideways glance, every Sunday dinner where I was invisible, began to collapse in slow motion. I stood there, holding his handshake for just a beat longer than necessary, letting the room digest it. From the corner of my eye, I saw Julia's face lose its practiced composure. Her lips parted, eyes narrowing slightly, as if she could blink the moment away. As if rewinding the past 10 seconds would somehow restore the order of the world where she stood above me. It wouldn't. My mother looked stunned, not horrified yet, just confused. That particular shade of disbelief where the brain races to rearrange reality so it doesn't hurt as much. "Wait," she finally said, voice brittle. Simon, you mean Rachel? She's your client? Simon chuckled politely, but there was a note of steel in it. Client, yes. But more importantly, one of the sharpest business owners I've worked with in the hospitality space. He turned to me. Are you staying for the full evening? I nodded. Oh, I wouldn't miss it. When he walked off, the silence didn't break, it shattered. Julia stepped forward, her heels clicking with too much force. You own Vera? Yes. This Vera? She waved vaguely around the ballroom, as if there were another. This Vera, I confirmed. But when? How? Her voice was rising, not in fear, but in disbelief, the kind only entitlement produces. I opened my first location 8 years ago, I said. Vera came later. It's one of 13. My mother gasped quietly. 13? I met her eyes, steady. Yes, Blue Leaf Group, that's me. There was no gloating in my voice, no triumph, just clarity. And that, more than anything, seemed to rattle them. But why didn't you tell us? Julia demanded. Why let us think you were just bartending? I wasn't letting you think anything, I replied. You never asked. The words hung heavy, undeniable. My mother reached out, as if to touch my arm, but thought better of it. All this time, Rachel, we assumed. I know, I interrupted gently. You assumed I was failing. You assumed I didn't measure up. You assumed I wasn't worth asking about. That's not fair, Julia snapped. We've supported you. No, I said firmly. You tolerated me, you minimized me, and you made sure I felt small every chance you got. A small crowd had gathered now, guests trying to act casual, pretending they were just passing through, but the air had shifted. People were listening. Julia was shaking her head, voice cracking. So what now? You show up like this, what? To humiliate me? To make my party about you? That stung more than I expected. This isn't about you, I said, quieter now. It never was. I didn't come here to expose anyone. I came here because I was invited to celebrate your engagement. I wasn't planning to say anything. But when Simon greeted me, the truth came out. That's not on me. My mother was blinking fast, trying to recover. Rachel, this is a lot to process. Too proud of you, of course, You're proud now, I echoed. She didn't answer. Then Julia muttered under her breath, I just don't get why you dress like this. Why you drive that old car. You're rich, apparently, and you still look like... A server? I finished. Her face flushed. She knew I'd caught her. I let that moment settle before I said, because I don't dress for approval, I dress for comfort. I don't need my values sewn into my jacket sleeve. But you could have at least told us, my mother whispered. You let us underestimate you. I didn't let you. You chose to. My voice never rose, but my heart did, pounding, solid, finally unafraid. I sat through years of silent dinners and snide comments, and I took it because I thought maybe one day you'd see me for who I was, not who you wanted me to be. But you never did, and that's okay now. Because I don't need your version of love to survive. For the first time in my life, I saw something rare on Julia's face. Uncertainty. She looked away. Then, from behind me, a new voice entered. Rachel? It was Preston. He was frowning slightly, confused. I just heard. You own this place? I nodded. That's right. Wait, so all this entire night, was hosted by me, I said. Your engagement venue is one of my businesses. He opened his mouth to say something, but no words came. He looked like a man who just realized the support beam of his ego had shifted an inch too far. Simon reappeared beside us, holding a glass of champagne. Now that introductions are out of the way, Madam Moore, may I suggest a toast? I think the crowd would love to hear from you. I raised an eyebrow. Really? Absolutely. A word from the woman who made this celebration possible. All eyes turned to me. Julia looked like she might bolt. My mother's lips parted in panic. Heather had her phone halfway raised. I stepped onto the small platform near the center of the ballroom where the string quartet had just finished their last note. Someone handed me a microphone. I cleared my throat. Thank you all for being here tonight to celebrate Julia and Preston, whose future I hope is as solid as the champagne flutes on your tables. A few polite laughs. I won't take up much of your time. I just want to say sometimes the people we overlook are the ones who've been working in silence, not seeking applause, but building something quietly powerful. I know what it feels like to be underestimated. I've lived it, and tonight I realized I don't need to be angry about it anymore. I looked toward Julia. Because being underestimated gave me the freedom to create, it gave me the motivation to grow, and now, I get to choose how I show up. A beat of silence. And tonight, I choose to show up as myself. I handed back the mic. Applause erupted, not loud, but sincere. A few guests looked stunned. Some looked embarrassed. Most looked thoughtful. When I stepped down, Julia wouldn't meet my eyes. But I didn't need her to. Because for the first time ever, I saw myself clearly and I wasn't shrinking anymore. The applause faded. People returned to their tables. Glasses clinked again. The quartet resumed their soft playing as if the world hadn't just shifted on its axis, but it had for me, and for them. I didn't feel triumphant. Not really. I felt released. For the first time in years, I wasn't holding my breath. I spent the next hour floating between conversations. Old classmates, investors, even a few of Julia's friends, all now curious, overly polite, suddenly remembering my name. Funny how quickly people recalibrate when the title changes. But my focus wasn't on them. I was waiting for the real conversations, the ones that mattered. The first came in the garden terrace, where I found Julia, alone, arms crossed, glass of champagne untouched. She didn't look up when I approached. "Nice speech," she muttered. "Thanks." Silence. "I suppose you're loving this," she said. The shock, the reveal, everyone suddenly looking at you like you're the star. I leaned on the railing, beside her, not above her. "I didn't do it for that." She laughed bitterly. "Right. You just happened to accidentally get outed at my engagement party." "I didn't plan any of this, Julia," I said softly. "I didn't want to make tonight about me. But I won't apologize for existing anymore either." She turned to me. "Why didn't you tell us? Would you have listened?" Her mouth opened, closed. "That's what I thought," I said gently. "I thought you were failing," she admitted, almost too quietly. "But you were building." "I still am," I said. "Just like you, just in a different way." A long pause. Then, all this time, I thought I was the successful sister. "You are," I replied. "But being successful doesn't mean someone else has to be small." She looked at me, really looked for the first time in years. There was no sarcasm in her eyes, just confusion, maybe a little awe. "I don't know how to talk to you now," she said. "Start by not talking at me." She gave a half laugh. "Fair." And for a moment, we stood there not as enemies, not even rivals, just two women who had grown up under the same roof and in completely different worlds. Then came my mother. She found me later, near the dessert table, alone. She hesitated before walking over, her hands clutched too tightly around her purse. "Rachel," she said. "Mom." Another pause. "You look beautiful tonight." "Thank you." I owe you an apology," she whispered, voice strained. "For years I dismissed you. I thought I was helping by pushing you to do more, look better, be something else. But I wasn't helping. I was just projecting." "That's true." She flinched but stayed. "I wanted you to have an easier life," she said. "One where people respected you immediately. I didn't realize you were earning that respect on your own." I studied her carefully. This wasn't polished. It wasn't rehearsed. It was raw. "I've always wanted your approval," I said, "but I've stopped needing it." Her eyes glistened. "I'm proud of you, Rachel. Not just for what you built, but for who you became while we weren't looking." That hit harder than I expected. "Thank you," I said. And I meant it. Later, in a quiet corner of the lobby, I found my father. He hadn't said much all evening, but now he was waiting, as if he knew I'd come find him. "I owe you a drink," he said with a small smile, "for old time's sake." I nodded. "You built something," he said. "On your own. You didn't need any of us." "I wanted you," I corrected. "I just didn't get you." He looked down at his hands. "I was wrong, Rach. I thought success looked like control. Suits, status, legacy. But what you've built, it's something else. It breathes." We sat in silence for a moment, and in that silence, I forgave him not with words, but by staying. The night ended slowly. People drifted out, some still whispering, but the storm had passed. And what remained was something new. Not harmony, not healing, but honesty. I walked out into the night air, cool against my skin. No driver, no spotlight. Just me in a navy blue suit and comfortable shoes, knowing I had finally arrived, not just at the party but into my own life. 3 months later, I was back at the same table. Not the one from the engagement party, but the one that mattered more, my parents' dining room table, the one I'd grown up at. The one I'd once been quietly pushed to the far end of, where my words got lost between wine refills and success stories that never included mine. It looked the same. Same polished mahogany, same set of plates with tiny gold rims, same candle centerpiece my mother brought out for occasions. But something was different now, not in the furniture, but in the air. This time, my seat wasn't an afterthought. It was centered, warm, waiting. My mother called from the kitchen, "Rachel, can you slice the bread?" "Sure," I answered like I'd done 1,000 times before. But this time the tone was different. It wasn't, "You belong in the kitchen." It was, "You're part of this." I walked in and found Julia already there, arranging a salad. She looked up, her smile shy but real. "Hey," she said. "I tried that citrus vinaigrette you mentioned last week. You were right, game changer." I grinned. "Told you." We didn't say more. We didn't need to. That was the thing now. The silence between us wasn't sharp anymore. It was soft, recovering. Dinner was simple: roast chicken, green beans, the salad, and my mother's too, sweet potato casserole. No string quartet, no camera crew, no status games. Just family. Halfway through the meal, my dad raised his glass. "I just want to say," he began, clearing his throat, "I'm proud of my girls, both of them, for who they are, for what they've built in business, and in themselves." I looked at Julia. She smiled, nodded toward me. "I second that," she said. "And for the record, Rachel, I've told 3 clients about Vera this week. You might get a few calls." I laughed. "I'll send you a referral bonus." Everyone chuckled, even Mom, who, for once, didn't try to correct the tone or redirect the spotlight. She just watched us and sighed, "This feels good." And it did. Not perfect, but real. Later that night, Julia and I stood on the porch with mugs of tea, watching the neighborhood settle into its quiet. The same porch we used to sit on as kids, legs swinging, dreaming about grown-up lives that would never look like this. "You still drive that old car?" she asked, teasing. "Runs better than half the sports cars in your parking garage." She rolled her eyes. "Touché." Then she added, "You know, I've been thinking, I want to build something too. Not just work for someone else's dream. Something mine." I looked at her. "What are you thinking?" "Sustainable fashion, boutique scale, maybe even partner with local weavers. You think that's crazy?" I shook my head. "I think that's the smartest thing you've said all year." She bumped her shoulder into mine. "Would you help me figure it out?" "Yeah," I said. "I'd like that." And just like that, we began again. A few days later, I returned to Vera for a meeting. As I passed through the lobby, I paused to check the main dining room. It was quiet, pre-opening. Light filtered through the skylights, bouncing off glassware and clean countertops. I walked toward the corner booth, the one I always reserved for VIPs. I slid into the seat. This booth, like the table at home, used to be a place I didn't feel I belonged. Now, I owned the keys, and I finally understood. Success wasn't the empire, it wasn't the money, it wasn't the applause after a speech. It was this: sitting at any table knowing you don't need to prove your place anymore. As I left Vera that afternoon, I passed by a new bartender we'd just hired. Young, nervous, first week on the job. She smiled awkwardly. Hi, are you the manager? I smiled back. No, I said gently, but I'm always around if you need anything. She nodded, still not knowing who I was. And that was fine. Because I didn't need a title to be powerful anymore. I'd already taken my seat not just at the table, but in my own life.